Okay, we're back. I hope. I hope I didn't ruin everything by resetting there. That would be really stinky. I might have made it so that you won't get notified that I'm live or won't be able to go directly to my live video because I cut it. So I'm going to wait a couple minutes because that's really, really stinky. I was trying to use a streaming software to do this, but unfortunately, I'm just using a work computer, so um, yeah, it didn't work. And I had to reset, and that really stinks, but hopefully, you guys can still hear me really well. Hopefully, you can see me better. I am still able to use this new camera and new microphone. Um, so pretty stoked about that. Um, yeah, my viewership is going to go really far down this week, which really stinks because I'm really looking for you guys to ask me a bunch of questions, and that happened kind of randomly with the internet. But anyways, if this ends up being a really short episode, I probably will just do another one of these at the very end. I do have some stuff I want to talk about, but as you know, if random people join in or you guys that consistently watch this, if you have some questions, you know, actually know how to see the comment section now. So ask away, and I would love to answer them. But I guess I'll just get right to it. My point of this episode was just to, or this week, was just to kind of slow things down and see what people are curious about. Um, I've had a really, really busy couple weeks in the shop, and so this was kind of a way for me to decompress from having to teach something pretty thoroughly every week because I really don't want to teach things haphazardly. But there are some smaller questions that I can answer that may still be really useful, and there are things that I'm not going to really do an entire episode devoted to, but can still give you the information of. Let me know if the video quality is okay. It looks like the frame rate is really bad right now. But anyways, let's get right into it. So, um, uh, this season, because we've had such little snow for so long, I've had a lot more core shots and a lot more really serious damage to skis come in. And where I'm going with this is you get asked the question a lot of where's the point of no return? And typically the people that are asking you that are actually like just super freaked out, even though what they did is really not the end of the world. Core shots, or base shots as I like to call them, can be repaired relatively easily. A core shot is a shot that actually goes into your core. So the reason why that's really an important difference is a lot of times you can scrape off that base material but never actually get into your wood core. And so in all reality, you're just doing a repair on that base material, and you don't actually have to worry about the integrity of the ski all that much. And if something were to happen, it would have come off or anything like that, you can just re-repair it. But there is obviously a point of no return on skis and snowboards. And I like to kind of think about it in two or three different ways. So the first one is your edges. Replacing an entire section of an edge is possible, but I find that skis where entire sections of edges are falling off or have been split or whatever it may be are typically not in the shape where you're going to want to spend the money to get that done. Right? That's a pretty expensive process because it's really labor intensive. It's really hard to do. You actually have to weld kind of that edge back in between your base material and your core material, and so that's pretty hard to do correctly. And then you actually have to, if you do it really correctly, actually weld that metal together to make it a seamless edge again, and that is really, really hard and really technical. So I like to think anytime, unless you're taking a brand new ski out, and something really bad happened on the glacier or wherever it may be, any ski where that edge is separating is probably going to be kind of a point of no return thing. One of the other ones is fracture damage. Now, a small amount of fracture damage can be kind of repaired, but fracture damage kind of manifests itself in a way where it messes everything up around it. And so you're now messing up the base material, you're messing up the core material, you're messing up the edges and everything around it. And so you get to the point with like impact, or like it's like a compound fracture on a bone or an impact fracture on a bone. It's just never going to heal correctly again. And so no matter how much you grind that down, you'd have to like literally get into the core material in order to grind that down enough to be flat. And obviously at that point you've ruined the ski. And so fracture damage, impact damage is really, really, really bad. Stuff on the tips and tails are usually reinforced. And so that's really, really useful because you can usually withstand 1 or 2 impact fractures. Additionally, all the rocker on your ski is going to make it so typically you're not like hitting directly into something. You're actually kind of lifting off of it and damaging this down here and this separating, or I guess you can't really see, huh? This separating here is not the end of the world. Now, it may never be exactly the same again, but it can definitely be repaired. But impact on like the side of a ski, really, really effective way to make it kind of impossible to repair. Now, again, it's just like totaling your car. If nothing is really, truly impossible, but is it worth it on your ski to make this happen? And typically the answer is going to be no. Again, for like an impact fracture. And then there's a couple of other reasons why your ski would just be totally trashed. But some people have rock skis that have PTEX, like half of the bottom of the ski is PTEX. And if you really don't care about the conditions you're taking out the ski in and how it rides, or you're taking it in conditions where it doesn't really matter how that ski interacts with the snow, it's just going to kind of be okay, then you can really do anything with the bottom. You can replace base. It's really not that bad. But things where you're damaging the core are typically a little bit more sensitive. So that's kind of where the point of no return is. But as I said before, 99% of the questions I have that are point of no return per se, I can easily fix and have no problem with, and get you your ski back. What it looks like really quickly, and this ski is not finished, and this isn't the best repair job. Oop, gotta step way back. So this isn't the best repair job I've ever done in my life, but it's not bad. It's something I'm still okay with giving back to a customer. But not everything is always going to be perfect, and on your own skis, it's not always going to be perfect. With me, it's nice and easy because I have a base grinder, and so if this repair doesn't tear out when I grind into it at 600 rotations a minute with 80 grit sandpaper, then it's not going to tear out when you're skiing on it. And so I have kind of that quality assurance with, and I also have the materials, the proper materials. Instead of just using PTEX, I can use multiple types of plastics to get in there and make these repairs happen. But you can kind of see where this repair is, and it hasn't been waxed yet, and so that's another reason why, well, maybe you're not going to be able to see where that repair is. Yeah, you can kind of see where the repair is there, but it's not super bad. And this is, again, somebody who thought they had basically ruined a brand new ski. This is not really nice ski, brand new ski, perfectly good to get back into working order. And after I ground this down, after you put a new stone pattern in it, do the edges, do the whole shebang, it'll ski just like it was coming out of the factory, if not potentially better. Honest to God, sometimes some things come tuned out of the factory and they're really tuned like crap right out of the factory, and bringing it in and getting it actually professionally tuned is going to make it ski better. So not a good thing that core shot happened, but really not the end of the world. It actually wasn't even the core shot. It was just base. And in that same regard, I didn't even have to replace the base. I filled it, and it worked just fine. You clean cut it. We're going to do a base repair episode, so I won't go too much into that. But next question that I've gotten a lot of, and again, if anybody listening or watching, Jesus Christ, not on the radio, maybe I'm on the radio somewhere, but if anybody watching has any questions, just write them in the comments. Comment on even my page. I can check the notifications or whatever on the group or whatever. But yeah, I'm happy to stop the questions I'm working on that I've gotten in the shop this week and talk to you guys. But I've gotten some questions about pin bindings and kind of why you do and don't want pin bindings. So a pin binding is essentially like an ultralight way of making touring binding. So I happen to have, I actually didn't even think about it until right now, but I happen to have actually a really good example of a pin binding and a really good example of kind of the alternative here in the shop. So this is a pin binding. This is a G31. It's like an alpinist binding rather. It's ultralight, so combined with this ultralight Black Pro ski, this is providing you a really, really, really nice lightweight solution to getting uphill. The sacrifice to it is that there's no toe in. So this toe piece is either locked or it's not locked. And when it's locked, it will not release no matter what, which terrifies me, right? So I have terrible knees, just in general, and I would rather bust out of a binding and break my ski than break my knee. And that's not to say that this binding is unsafe in any way. A lot of people ski downhill with them unlocked and have absolutely no problem with it, where they feel like they're releasing just fine. The heel piece still has din. It connects into your boot really differently right there, but it still has din. It still actually has lateral din and forward din, and so in that way it kind of compensates just like a pivot binding would, but for this toe piece. So yeah, it's essentially just a lightweight solution, and your downside is that you either have to be locked or unlocked, and people have different responses to that. They're good bindings, but a basic pin binding actually can be relatively cheap now. They're sometimes like $300. Rail bindings tend to be, well, pin bindings can be $300, $400, $500, $600, obviously more. But rail bindings typically start at like $390 or $400. And then like your more advanced tech bindings start like, $550, $600. And I'll talk about why those are so expensive. Because I also happen to have these in here. I gotta keep all my shop tickets in order. And this is kind of a new technology. It's called the shift technology. And it's a way to get a pin binding, but also have an actual toe piece on it. So what this binding does is it releases and gives you a pin binding setup essentially. Now you can then close it and put it back in. So now this is essentially acting as a normal toe piece once you put this down. So that toe piece has din on it. This heel piece has din on it, but it can still act as a touring binding, and it doesn't have the typical touring rail. And I'll show you real quickly if you don't know what that looks like. Actually, this ski we were looking at before has a touring rail on it. So as you can see, a lot of these damaged things happen on touring skis. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because touring skis, like myself, we like to just go off into random spots, and sometimes there's rocks and stuff like that. But anyways, this is a kind of heavy binding, offers the exact same solution, and they're just fine, and I ski them as my primary binding. But as technology progresses, you get the pin binding, and then now you're getting this. This is called an MNC binding. So a lot of people know about the shift bindings, but don't really know why they're called the shift MNC binding. And the reason for that is MNC stands for multi-norm conformity. And so the multi-norm means that it can be compatible with multiple different types of boots. And typically your bindings are going to be compatible with one or two different types of boots. It's usually an alpine and a grip walk, or and grip walk and touring. But this can actually deal with all three. And that's why you pay the price for it. Is it's a really compatible binding. People have mixed results on it. I really want to try them out myself. If anybody Solomon makes them, Atomic makes them, and one other manufacturer makes them. If anybody at any of those companies is watching this, you can definitely send me some of these, and I'll test them out for you and give you my review. But no, these are really cool, really new technology. It's not the lightest binding in the world because you are paying for a little bit more weight, but it's not as heavy as a rail, so it's a good in between. It's great. A lot of people say for somebody who's like a 75% inbounds and 25% out of bounds skier. And so that's kind of what I am at this point, mostly because I work up here. So I'm just here a lot. So pin bindings are something that, okay, those are fine. Sorry, I had to check shop tickets, make sure I wasn't messing everything up for myself tomorrow. Pin bindings are something that are really useful, but also everybody has a different opinion on. Same with the MNC bindings, same with every new technology. Honestly, that's just always the way it is. There's really cool things called like the cast system, and that allows you to actually take off your entire toe piece and put on a different toe piece when you're going uphill and downhill. I mean, it's cool. It's really cool what things have developed, but in terms of like the mainstream big manufacturers, the MNC technology is definitely the next step up in that technology. Okay, so the next question that I've gotten a lot of in the shop is you get a lot of people who bring me skis, and quite frankly, the skis are pretty sketchy. And the main reason for that is not the edges, it's not the bases, it's the mounting platform. And so the question that I'm going to address is, why can you only do so many mounts on a ski? And what are your limiting factors? What are the questions that you're asking when you do those mounts? So I'm going to get a really, this is a practice ski. Nobody's ski would ever look like this. Don't worry, don't have a heart attack when I bring out this ski because it is so grotesque and awful. It's a practice ski, don't worry. Okay, so this is the grotesque, horrible ski. And what I mean by that is all of these random holes that are drilled all over the ski. I need to either be facing up. I guess it's a little better. All of these random holes, actually that's a lot better. Cool. On this ski are different mounts or different hole patterns that have drilled in for different bindings. And that's basically your first limiting factor. Is once you drill a hole in the ski and take the screw out, that hole can really never be mounted into again. If one hole out of a binding gets stripped or messed up, or something happens during the initial mounting process, which that's probably the most common way that this happens, you can replace it if it's just one. So use something called a plastic insert. It looks like this. Jeez. Nice, that autofocus, look at that. And that you just drill out a bigger hole and put it in there. But these are rated to hold your binding just like a normal screw would, and a normal hole would. But if you're really not supposed to use more than one on a binding. The reason for that is obviously they're not quite as rigid, I guess. So they're really good, but you don't want to be using them all the time or anything like that. So number one thing is once that hole is used, you can't use it again. And so you can imagine if you have that many holes on a ski that finding a spot to put your new holes is really, really, really hard. And sometimes it's impossible because you can't just drill a hole right next to a hole. Now, you can get pretty close. What I always say as rule of thumb is you need to give the distance of half the diameter, basically the radius of the hole, away from the edge of the hole to drill your next hole. So you have to have a full half hole clearance in between them. Now, if you were to do it exactly at a half hole clearance twice in a row, that spot is ruined and you would probably bust that binding. So every time you drill in, the first time, your binding is basically a part of your ski. It is the only separation between your ski. And broken point in your ski. And so that first time you have the binding on here, it's basically one with your ski and it's never going to come off. I mean, mismounts happen and things happen with crazy crashes. But for the most part, if a binding is done correctly, it is never coming off that ski. The second that you now take that out and drill new holes, those other holes are soft points in the ski. So now you have a weak point in the ski at that point. And that is your second limiting factor when I'm determining if I can remount a ski. Is how cared for are those holes and what are those holes plugged with? So if you bring me a ski that has open holes like this, and I ask you how long those holes have been open, and you tell me, well, I don't really know, since a year or two ago, I now have to draw a huge circle around those holes and say I can't go anywhere near them with the drill. And so rotten wood, or just having the potential of rotten wood, is your other limiting factor. You want to get those holes filled as quickly as you can. Now, when you take a binding off, if you're doing it yourself, there's a reason you should be doing it, and you should have the materials to fill that right away. Otherwise, don't take that binding off. Get the tech who's installing your next binding to do it for you. Now, you might want to take it off and put it onto another ski. I would still encourage you to bring that old ski, or just bring both, to somebody to get them properly filled, unless you have plugs. Now, people fill with epoxy all the time, and I'll tell you why I don't like filling with epoxy. And I might not be right about this, but I feel like epoxy is relatively hard. And so filling a hole with something that is relatively hard is now making kind of a brittle spot in the ski. And so what plugs are made of is a soft plastic that's just hard enough to go into the ski and kind of sit in there, but also soft enough where it's malleable. And when your ski bends like that, it has no problem taking that bend. Now, if you use a soft enough epoxy where it doesn't have any problem taking that bend, which can be quite massive at some times, then your epoxy is not really doing anything because it's not the right set of epoxy and you're letting material into that hole anyways. So that's why I prefer plugs, and that's kind of why I not look down upon epoxy, but if somebody brings me a ski with epoxy, I know it wasn't professionally done because a professional will not do that. So then my other limiting factors, basically just general structure of the ski. And the last one is where the mounting platform is. So I've got a pair of skis in front of me, and now I'm going to have to move this camera around a whole bunch. And this is like a nice camera that Johnny's letting me borrow, and I really appreciate it. But I'm going to be really careful with trying to do this. And also not trying to show you guys names on shop tickets. So. Okay. This is a pair of skis that essentially I'd be mounting right now. And what I have on these skis right now is a jig. And it's essentially something that a shop can use to help them mount a lot of skis at a time. It makes sure that your holes are straight. It makes sure that your holes are in the right spots every single time. And it has the mounting platforms basically in the boot maneuverability built into it. So this is on a jig. I'm gonna like crouch down weirdly and get right next to this. That's great. So this jig will allow me again to mount this boot really easily. But when you're mounting with a jig, and this is something that we can go over in a lot of detail later on, but unless people want me to really go into mounting in depth, I'd rather spend an entire episode on it. This thing is so heavy. Holding this up is so heavy. Anyways, but essentially when a ski is manufactured, it's manufactured with a mounting platform. And that's a raised section with reinforced materials that allow you to drill into it and have a successful mount where you're flush with the ski and you have a really, really nice tight bond with the screw and the ski and all that good stuff. And so the mounting platform is only so long. So if you have a smaller ski and a huge, huge, huge foot and huge boot, and I actually have to move off that mounting platform, I don't know if you can see, but in the back of the ski there, it dips down quite a bit. And that mounting platform goes away. And so not only is that bad because you don't want to be drilling through the ski to make dimples in the bottom of the ski, but it's also areas where the ski might not have that reinforced material that's going to make it so that your mount is ultimately successful. You can end up making it so screw holes are stripped, and so you're just endlessly screwing into a hole, which, you know, if it's done once, again, there's a reason why you have 4 screws in your binding. If it's done once, it might be okay, but if it's done twice, it's going to be really, really weak binding. So, again, that's kind of the last limitation is, am I moving on or off your mounting platform? And usually the answer to that is no. But sometimes it does you do run into a case where you have to move too far forward or too far back. A lot of times what that is parents trying to really stretch skis for their kids, which is fine, but I say just have another kid, and then the second kid can just grow into those skis anyway, so it'll be just fine. But no, it's usually just one of those things where it's like, you know, I really literally can't do this, and it's pretty understandable. But if you're home mounting skis, that's something you really want to look out for, is where are you on that mounting platform? What materials are your skis made out of? Do you have any like open holes or anything like that? And you can come get plugs from a shop. A shop will sell you plugs, or maybe just give them to you. And you can buy them online, but you have to buy like 200 of them. So you may as well just get them from a shop, because otherwise you're going to have 150 plastic plugs that you can't use for anything else except ski mounts. And hopefully you will never need 100 plastic plugs for skis. So anyways, that's basically asking about remounting and stuff like that. I will go a little bit further into detail because I kind of had this planned out where if a lot of people are engaging me, I would answer their questions. Otherwise, I'll just make this a short episode. But I do kind of have this set up where I can kind of talk you through what goes into mounting a pair of skis, and why it's a shop process instead of a home process for the most part. Now, a lot of people do home mount their skis all the time, and a lot of people do it really, really well. But I will say that a lot of things that I have in this shop are people who have mismounted their skis and now need to correct it. And so now you've taken a brand new ski and you've weakened it in the ways that I was just talking about. but additionally now you have to find a different spot, and usually you're shooting for a sweet spot on that ski. So you're mounting so that the center of your boot is right on this sweet spot per se, where it feels really, really good to ski on it. So you're never going to get that again. You're going to have to move forwards or back, and thusly, you know, it just kind of stinks. So that's kind of why it's nice to bring it to a shop. Now, past this point, I'm not really going to be able to get me and the ski, so it's going to be kind of audio. Feel free to listen along. I'll try to move it back and forth, but I don't want to be moving the camera too much that it makes people, you know, nauseous and whatnot. So, when I'm mounting a ski, it's very different than when you're mounting a ski. So when I'm mounting a ski, I'll go through this process very quickly, but it's super duper easy. I make sure that the skis are facing the right way. Now, that might sound real dumb, but it does actually happen, and these skis are a good example where this graphic is so, like, I don't even know what to call it, but it's like almost symmetrical, and the ski has a park ski shape, which is also almost symmetrical. And so it's really easy to lay this ski down backwards. I'll show you, hopefully you can kind of see what I mean, where these tails and those tips have kind of a similar shape, and it's almost symmetrical. So first step, make sure your skis are in the right way. And then for me, second step, check my jig. Get a jig off the wall. I've got a whole wall of them. Ooh, now you can see how fancy I am with my light. But I've got a whole wall of those jigs, so that almost every binding that you bring me, I can do this process with. And this process cuts down the time by like tenfold, easily. And so I get my jig. Then each jig has different hole patterns on it. And so, say I'm using this jig, I would hold my binding up to it, match the hole patterns, make sure that everything matches, and then tape off the holes that I'm not using so I don't accidentally screw into them. Then after that, I've already got this set up, so I'm going to put this one back. Oh, that was hilarious. I just moved the computer and not the camera. Anyways. After that, I position the jig on the ski with the boot center on the boot center mark. And I've already done this, but these jigs are adjustable. They can get bigger and smaller. And they've got these little pins that tell you this is where the toe goes and this is where the heel goes. Put your boot in, make sure it fits, make sure your boot center mark is good, put it down, good to go. Last thing I'll do, I'll make sure that everything is flush with the ski, the jig is flush with the ski, so that I'm not drilling any weird holes anywhere. And then, after that, I'll get my bit. Actually, usually I'll get my bit first. This is what a drill bit looks for a ski. So it's got a nice little notch on there, and this limits how deep you can get into the ski. So this is a 9mm drill, and it will only go 9mm into a ski before that nick happens. And you can press down on that nick for a little bit, and then pull off it, and it'll actually make a nice little round spot for that hole. Additionally, it'll make kind of an outline that gives you a nice little guided area to get into that hole. It's really, really nice. These proper bits, really, really nice. You can use a 5/16 drill bit, but that's just going to give you this end part. That's not going to give you the nick, and it's not going to give you the auto regulation of being able to drill it without having to worry about drilling through the ski. Now at home, you do an additional thing where you essentially take a normal bit and you wrap, I'll get it closer, you'll wrap duct tape around this, and that'll act as like your buffer to make it so you don't draw down into that ski too much. But a proper bit will allow you to do that. And then when you take the proper bit, you've got your mounting platform set up. You want to check it against the sidewall of the ski and make sure it's not going to drill through your ski. Now, this is going to be really hard to show, but I got the ski there. You take your holes, your hole locations, you go to the side of the ski by the hole locations, and you make sure that you're not going to drill through. Now that one is really close. It is really, 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 really close. To the point where I am almost, a little bit sketched out about drilling it. But I've done enough skis where I'm pretty sure that this is going to be my proper bit. This is a 9mm bit. The other factor in that is the diameter of the bit. So you have 3.5mm diameter bits, and you have 4.1mm diameter bits. And a 4.1 bit is typically going to be drilling through a metal ski. So a wood ski with a fiberglass top sheet is really easy to drill through. It's just like drilling through a piece of wood. It's soft, it's nice, you drill right through it, you're good to go. But a lot of these new skis have, to save weight and to give all sorts of other types of responses, they have like a titanium top sheet or a carbon top sheet or something like that. And so that's really hard to drill through, and you'll be pushing with all your weight down on it, trying to get through it. And those are really hard to mount without a jig, because you're just shaking, basically trying to drill that hole in with so much pressure that you get into it. But with a jig, it's really nice, and you can usually just use whatever bit that's recommended for it. It also tell you basically by what they recommend, how or what the ski is made out of. I will be right back in 1 second. Sorry, I stay late at work to do this, and I have to drink a cup of coffee in the afternoon, and it tends to hit me right around when I'm doing this. So anyways, so you get your mounting plate, and you check your screw length, check everything out, make sure everything is flush. Honestly, at this point, when I'm ready to drill, I'll put the boot back in, get ready to drill, and then it's just a matter of drilling those holes in, tightening everything down so it's flush with the ski, and you're good to go. Like, honest to God, mounting for me, I've seen almost every single type of mount that you can have, and it's really easy for me to consistently do it really well. If anybody wants to see what that looks like, I mean, I have it mounted up right now to get drilled. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of move on to what that would look like for you at home and why it's so different at home as opposed to in a shop like this. So basically at home, you don't have these jigs. And so instead of having a nice set hole, you have to use something called a paper guide or a paper mount. And paper mounts can look a number of different ways. But for the most part, there's just like websites and resources that give you things like this. And these are going to allow you to have the hold positions here. And they let you set it up on the ski and basically tape it down. Measure from each side. Make sure everything's good. Tape it down so it's absolutely centered of the ski. And then drill it out. And it works. And it works well. But it is a lot harder. And it, more than being a lot harder, it's a lot easier to mess up. Now, what's better than that, but still not the best, is a paper jig like this. So this is a laminate, basically a see-through jig. And this one, you can tape onto the ski, and it's got... Ooh, that is not going to focus. Ooh. Oh. My audio is still working, I know that, but will my video come back? Man, this is such a bummer. Such a bummer. Can I pause it? I don't think I can. I know what I need to do, but it won't let me. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pause it or shut it down and then reload it. The camera died. All right, let me